Hey there, I'm Ashley Bullington, and you're watching the fifth quarter, our Friday night wrap-up show where we bring you all of the scores from across the greater Houston area. And Week 7 was a big one. Districts are starting to come down to the wire now, as you're seeing undefeateds now become undefeated in district play. You're seeing these big-time matchups between big-time schools. You're seeing districts go a little crazy, like a few of them that we're not expecting to see, to have just guys coming out of the woodworks playing amazing football. But Week 7 did not disappoint either. We had some big-time matchups. We're going to start with Clear Falls versus Dickinson. Clear Falls was our Geico Team of the Week a few weeks ago as they went 2-0 for the first time in school history to start the season. They actually went 3-0 before they lost in the Week 4, but had an amazing start to the season. And Dickinson, who was 5-1 going into this game, with their only loss being to Allen. But Dickinson pulls this one out. They win 63-0 over Clear Falls. Up next, we've got a battle of undefeateds once again. Fort Bend Bush versus Ridge Point. Both these teams are undefeated in district and went head-to-head against one another. We thought it was going to be a big game. Both these teams seem to be solid as they all around on the field, very whole games, but another blowout win and a goose egg as Ridge Point beats Fort Bend Bush 24-0. Terry versus Angleton, another big win. Angleton takes this one. They win 33-3 over Terry. It's a down year for Terry right now as they're trying to kind of get back to just get some wins underneath them and keep some momentum going. But Angleton is trying to prove that they want that playoff spot as they went into tonight's game 2-2. But they want that playoff spot. They want to win. They want to put their names on the map because it's a whole other season once playoff starts. A big match or a big district that we've been watching so far this season, one that we weren't really expecting to have the big games that they're having and have all the teams still in the mix, is this 15-6A, as there's a battle for the title, a battle for playoff spots all throughout. And tonight, this Oak Ridge versus College Park game really put us one step closer into seeing which teams are going to be making it to the playoffs in this 15-6A district, as College Park beats Oak Ridge 45-28. College Park's now 4-3 on the season. Oak Ridge goes to 2-4. Oak Ridge not really the Oak Ridge of the past that we're used to seeing, with that stout, big offensive line that's just kind of dominating, and that defensive line who goes at a quarterback, goes at it. But they're giving teams a run for their money, as College Park. College Park won this one. They're still in the race for those 5 playoff spots, or 4 or 5 playoff spots. Another team, or another big game that we were watching in this district, was Klein Collins versus Klein Kane. This 15-6A, you've got Klein, you've got the Woodlands, you've got Klein Collins, you've got Klein Kane, Klein Oaks, College Park, Oak Ridge, a bunch of teams that are really solid teams. Last week Klein Kane goes and beats the Woodlands in just an upset battle in my eyes. But Collins beats this one. They win against Kane 49-14, and they held Klein Kane's offense to only 14 points. They did not score at all in the second half. A big win for Klein Collins as they keep fighting for that title. Another district rivalry that we were keeping an eye on was Cy Ridge versus Cy Creek. Cy Ridge going into this one 4-1. Cy Creek going into this one 3-3. It's going to be a good matchup. That Cy Ridge defense is one to be reckoned with, having big names like Josh White on there as a linebacker there. But Cy Creek pulls this one out 41-20, and they held Ridge to 20 points, and they were all scored in the second quarter. So for 3 quarters, Cy Creek's defense held up what they were trying to do and just played phenomenally. Our game of the week this week, Friendswood versus Foster. This one came down to the final seconds of the game. Big interception at the end, or Foster comes up to score. Then they try the 6-point, their 2-point conversion, can't get it. It's 34-32. Then Friendswood gets the ball back and holds on to this win. A big win for Friendswood as they in 10-5A are solidifying their spot at the top. Everyone thought that going into this week that Foster was going to be the team that held that first place spot in this district. Well, Friendswood might very well give them a run for their money, as Friendswood is now 6-0 for the season. We've got some more games that we're keeping an eye on that we'll get to throughout the rest of the night, but a big week. Week 7, another huge night. Districts are starting to come to setting themselves apart where you know who's going to win the district and you know who's going to go to playoffs. We love great high school football here at Inside High School Sports. We will be right back with our Inside High School Sports insider, Matt Harris, as he's going to bring us the rundown of a few things that happened on his night, and our producer, Robert Sheik. But we'll be right back with the 5th quarter.
Don't forget to catch our extended coverage of the high school football season each week on The Warm-Up, presented by your local Houston area Geico agents. We will get you ready for all the action this Thursday on all our social media outlets.
Ashley Bullington back with the 5th quarter, and we have the one, the only Inside High School Sports insider, Matt Harris. Matt, week 7, a huge week of Texas high school football. We were talking about in the 1st quarter how some of these district matchups are starting to come, or the playoff teams are starting to kind of, you're starting to see the difference between the teams that are going to be in the playoffs and the teams that aren't. And 15-6A is one of those where tonight kind of puts some room between the teams who are going to be in the playoffs and they aren't. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Side Creek, or no, not Side Creek, my bad. College Park. Mm-hmm. College Park was able to come from behind to beat, who was it? I'm blanking on it.
Oak Ridge,
yes.
There you go.
Oak Ridge was up 28-14 in this one. And then College Park went on I'm not great at math, but I think that's a 31-0 run to win 35-14 in this one. Or 45-28, my bad.
No, you're good?
Yeah, 15-6 it's crazy. I wrote last week in the cool down that it looked like a 7-team race in a 9-team district for 4 playoff spots. And I counted College Park as one of those 2 teams who I didn't see making it. And then come up and get a big win over Oak Ridge tonight. So maybe that knocks both of them out. Maybe not. I don't know. It's crazy. That district's kind of a mess. But I think Klein Collins, just to mention them real quick, they picked up a big win tonight over
Klein Cain.
On that one as well. Yes, Klein Cain. And Cain's another one of those teams kind of right at the fringe, kind of fighting for that last playoff spot, because I think it's going to be Klein Collins, Klein Oak, and Conroe 1, 2, 3, and then it's just a lot of really good teams for that last playoff spot. I think that this is perhaps the deepest district in Texas.
And then Cain beats the Woodlands last weekend to kind of just put a huge mark on their season, to say, you know what, the Woodlands are considered one of the best teams in the state. Let's beat them. So that says a lot for that 15-6A, just kind of the cluster that it is.
Yeah, no doubt, especially because, like you said, the Woodlands is one of those teams that you expect them every year to be good down there in Houston. And this is a team that went to a state championship game 3 years ago, I believe, in 2016 for the 2016-17 season. So that's a really good program down there, and a program that goes deep every year. I believe they lost to Allen in the 3rd or 4th round of the playoffs a year ago. And for them to potentially miss the playoffs, that's a big deal down in 15-6A.
So another district that we've been really keeping a close eye on is that 10-5A district. And they had a huge matchup tonight as Friendswood took on Foster. Both of these teams undefeated in district. Friendswood undefeated 5-0 going into this game. Foster, their only loss coming from a 6A school when they lost to Travis, which Travis is a phenomenal team on top of that, so not a bad loss right there. But these 2 teams come together, and Friendswood just edges out Foster. What does that say about the Friendswood team that we're seeing on the field right now?
I think that down in that district, you've got Shadow Creek, who went to state a year ago. You've got Foster, who lost to Shadow Creek in, I can't remember, it was the 4th or 5th round of the playoffs. Then you got Friendswood, who beat Foster tonight. You've got Angleton, who's always good down in Houston. And you've got a really good Hightower team that's been to a state championship game in the last decade as well. So I think when you put those 5 on the table, I think that I would put up those 5 against any other 5 of any district in Texas. That's tough. Thankfully, there's 4 playoff spots, so only one of those really good teams is going to wind up missing out. That is a statement win for Friendswood that I think really secures one of those last 2 playoff spots behind Foster and Shadow Creek. And to this point, I think you even get to wonder, it's like, well, is Friendswood a team that could make it deeper in the playoffs than even Foster will? Because Foster is, like I said, a team a year ago that went really deep and lost to a Shadow Creek team in a pretty close game that wound up going to the state championship game. So that's a huge win, really impressive win for Friendswood tonight.
And I saw in a tweet on the 10-6 or the 10-5A Twitter that they have that they actually picked Foster to be number 1 in that district going as they're going farther on, or as district closes up. They're expecting Foster to win that district, and Friendswood just kind of put a cap on that and said, we don't know about that. But, another big rivalry that we had was the Cypress Ridge, Cypress Creek, where Cy Ridge was 4-1, Cy Creek 3-3, but Creek beats Ridge 41-20. What do we think as we see these rivalries and these big wins from these districts kind of coming together, and you're seeing some teams that you might not have expected to win, but you're seeing them win, and you're seeing these districts kind of being up in the air?
Yeah, the Cy Creek's another team that I believe it was Cy Creek that a year ago barely snuck into the playoffs last week of the season, which is the 4th round. That's a deep district. That's a really good win for them tonight to kind of get back on track, get them back above 500 against a good team as well, and an impressive one, a 21-point win. I mean, that's nothing light. So shout out to Cy Creek. It's also just a quick mention, one of the best student sections as well in Texas, but very impressive one for the Wildcats tonight.
You do get to run our Twitter during games, so as well. You know better than anybody how good people's not only teams are, but their student sections. Well, I love it. Well, thanks, Matt, so much for coming on with us on week 7. What are your final thoughts as we're wrapping it up?
Final thoughts. I'm just looking forward to next week. Every week in Houston has been a surprise. This week especially was Friendswood over Foster. Last week you saw a crazy game in 15-6A, Klein Oak taking down Klein Collins. That was Collins' only loss in the year. So it's like every week there's a game that you kind of, it gets towards the end of the night and you're really keeping your eye on that score and you're like, wow, like this is a close game. And then maybe an underdog comes and wins and you're like, wow, like that's crazy. So really just looking forward towards another week of crazy Texas high school football action. And especially as every week that we get closer to December, it gets more and more important in terms of wins and losses with trying to make the playoffs for a lot of these schools.
Awesome, Matt. Well, thank you so much, and we'll be right back with the 5th quarter.
Watch Inside High School Sports to catch this week's Chevy Spotlight, brought to you by your Houston area Chevy dealers. Visit your nearest Chevy dealer to test drive their award-winning products.
Welcome back to the 5th quarter, and we have the producer of Chevrolet's Inside High School Sports, Robert Sheik, with us. Robert, week 7, huge.
Yeah, pretty wild week in the Houston area. Some upsets, including in our game of the week. At least maybe some people might consider an upset. Certainly in the AP state rankings, it's considered an upset. Friendswood knocks off Foster 34-32. Wild game there. Luke Gurdon, the quarterback at Friendswood, he's been starting there for a few years now. I think he was starting as a freshman in the playoffs a few years ago. It seems like he's been around forever. Leads the Mustangs to a big win tonight over Foster.
I was looking at Twitter earlier, kind of seeing the 10-6A and how people were expecting it to fall in Foster. They expected to be the top team in that district. And this kind of just messes with that a little bit. Yeah,
that district, so when this district was formed at the beginning of last season, the previous year, all 8 teams in that district had made the playoffs in their different districts the year before. Well, now all of a sudden you have them all in one district. Obviously 8 teams can't make the playoffs. 7 of the 8 did. The other one was Shadow Creek, who hadn't yet played a varsity season. We obviously know what Shadow Creek did last year. Only went to the state championship game. But yeah, a lot of people thought this was Foster's year in that district, and potentially to go as far, maybe as Shadow Creek did last year, and that may still well be the case. But Foster now with 2 losses on the season, both in these kind of wild shootout games. They lose to Fort Bend Travis earlier this season, and then the big one Friday night to Foster, or to Friendswood, excuse me.
So another team that's kind of one of those teams that you think could maybe have a good state run is Dickinson, and they just demolished Clear Falls tonight, 63-0.
Yeah, absolutely. Clear Falls has been a great story this year. Got off to a really good start, and is still in the thick of that playoff race in that district. But Dickinson, with the big game next week against Clear Springs, and that's a revenge game for Dickinson. Dickinson, I believe, blew a 28-0 lead in that game last year in the fourth quarter, if my memory serves me correct. And Clear Springs beat Dickinson 35-28. Those two programs go at it next week, and they'll both be tied atop the district standings. And Dickinson, there was no look ahead to that game tonight. Dickinson came ready to play. Big night for Mike Welch, the running back Sanders with a big night as well. And Dickinson absolutely rolled in that one.
Another goose egg. Ridge Point beats Fort Bend Bush. Both these teams undefeated in district, and not really what the score that you're expecting when you look at this one.
Yeah, no, and those two teams have played some really close games the last few years. Ridge Point, has not lost a district game, in I think 4+ years now. And speaking of showdowns next week, that's the other one. We're going to have a tough decision on what our game of the week will be next week. Is it going to be Dickinson Clear Springs, or is it going to be Ridge Point against Fort Bend Travis? Fort Bend Travis is undefeated. Ridge Point's only loss came at the hands of North Shore. That's going to be a fun ball game next Thursday night over at Mercer Stadium.
And Fort Bend Travis beats Austin 48-17. They're still undefeated on the year, going 6-0. What does that say about this Fort Bend Travis team, or what do you see from this Fort Bend Travis team that makes you think, wow, they could end Ridge Point's undefeated in district?
Yeah, no, that offense, Fort Bend Travis's offense, is so much fun to watch, and they keep finding ways to not just win, but win impressively. And that ball game next week, I think some folks at Ridge Point are probably, a little
nervous.
Upset. Well, I think maybe a little more, feeling a little slighted at this point. Probably, we're probably included in terms of the media that has kind of been hyping Travis all season. Travis has played a lot of fun, exciting, competitive games. That makes for good TV highlights, and it's a good story. And Ridge Point though is still the team to beat, and I think the folks at Ridge Point are they might be ready to prove a point next week. So that's going to be a really fun game to watch for sure.
So could Ridge Point give Fort Bend Travis their first loss? Another big district that we've been watching really closely is 15-6A. Last week, Klein Kane and Klein Collins both have big weeks. You have several big matchups in this week, including Klein Collins versus Klein Kane and Oak Ridge versus College Park. But how do you kind of see that district shaping up?
It's going to be one of those districts that comes down to November. It's not going to be decided before Halloween, I can promise you that. And speaking of that district, we'll have our Chevy Spotlight tomorrow is on the Woodlands Highlanders. The Woodlands riding a 2-game losing streak for the first time in, who knows how long. But the Highlanders with a chance tomorrow, an afternoon game against Klein. The Woodlands kind of needs to get back to its winning ways if the Highlanders want to see the playoffs. So, but yeah, that district, I don't know what to make of it, and I don't know that we'll really be able to sort it out until, the last games go final that last Friday night of the season.
So what can people expect to see tomorrow morning on Chevrolet's Inside High School Sports?
Well, we touched on a few of the games already. A couple others, I'll look at the rundown here. Barbers Hill, a big win for Barbers Hill, 28-0 over Baytown Lee. The Eagles are 3-0 in their district, and that's a good program that it just always kind of seems to keep finding ways to win. Let's see what else we have. Cy Creek with a big win tonight. Julian Awadia, huge night. The quarterback for Cy Creek, yeah.
That is a name.
4 touchdown passes and another one rushing for for Julian. Let's see what else here. I think we touched on most of tonight's games. George Ranch improves to 3-0 in district play last night on Thursday night with a big win over A-Leaf Taylor, 21-13. The big Stratford Memorial rivalry, that's one of the big rivalries in the city. And Memorial looked really good last night, 31-3. The win there, we'll have highlights of that one. And the big Tompkins Maid Creek game last night, too. Katy Tompkins suffered its first loss of the season last week to Katy. The Falcons are back flying high again with a nice win over Maid Creek. Maid Creek came into that game undefeated, too. So, that's a big win for Tompkins. And, a full show tomorrow for sure. And we'll also break down a little bit from the Houston High School perspective. We'll break down Texas OU and A&M Alabama. So
we like it.
Some big college games. It's a big college Saturday, so
gotta tie that in.
Yeah, let's tie that in. A lot of Houston High School area products will be on stage in both of those ball games.
Awesome. So Robert, what is your final thought from Week 7 of Houston area Texas high school football?
A lot of it's teams that have some really big games next week looked really good tonight, and it just has me excited for next week already. The way Dickinson played tonight going into that big showdown with Clear Springs, the way Ridgepoint played going into that showdown with Travis. Those are two shutout wins by both of those teams. Let's it's an exciting show. You want to watch this one, trust me. But next week, we're going to have some really fun games. And let's not forget, that Friendswood win is huge.
Yes.
Friendswood undefeated now on the season, 6-0. And, going to Foster, winning out there at Traylor Stadium, big win for the Friendswood Mustangs.
Awesome. Well, Robert, thank you so much. And thank you all for watching the fifth quarter. Don't forget to watch everything tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. on KHU 11.